Good morning, everybody, and happy Easter. I occasionally visit the parish religious education classes for our young people. And when I go there, they are invited to ask any question they want. They can ask anything about me, my country, my priesthood, anything. Recently at one of the classes, one of the kids asked me, if God made us, who made God? Another question was, what do you do in heaven? It sounds boring. So I told the kid, you get to play video games all day. And you know what? Adults have their way of looking at heaven. So Isaiah, for example, says, on this holy mountain, the Lord will provide rich, juicy food and choice wines. That sounds good to me. So why not the kid get to do what he wants to do? Now, this kid, he looked at me, he really wants to go to heaven. Another kid did not have a question. He just said, I don't think Jesus rose from the dead. It's not possible. Folks, there is not a single one of us here without questions and doubts. And there is not anyone here who has all the answers. I have my own questions. I say to myself, the post-Messianic world is not supposed to be a continuation of the very world that murdered the Messiah. The post-Messianic world is supposed to be different. So if Jesus is risen, why has nothing changed? Why do people still kill? Why do people in power still lie? Why do people still oppress? Why do some still go to bed hungry and some even die? Why do children still cry? Now, I can come up with theological answers to these questions in the same way that I answer kids in the classroom. After all, I have a Ph.D. in theology. This is my job. But theology has to become a faith conviction. So what do I say to myself? How do I answer my own questions? My faith conviction lies in the power of the Jesus story. Let me explain. For me, the credibility of the man is the power of his story. The credibility of the man is the power of the story. For 3 years, Jesus preached, taught his disciples, and went about doing good. But his life also reached what I call the Messianic crisis point. It led to opposition, his arrest, suffering, and finally, a very brutal death. But when it reached a boiling point, he lived out the very things he taught and he preached. This is what I mean by credibility of the man. So, for example, he had preached and taught, blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called children of God. And then one night, They came to arrest him for a crime he did not commit. His disciples wanted to go for the sword, and one of them even picked up his sword and cut off the ear of one of the soldiers. And in this precise moment, it could have either all have unraveled or it could all be proven. He ordered the sword to be put away, scolded his disciples, and then healed the very man who was there to arrest him. There was potential for violence, for bloodshed and viciousness, but Jesus became at that moment the very peacemaker he wanted his disciples to be. And as he taught, Jesus put an end to the cycle of violence and stood for peace and non-violence. In a moment of intense crisis, he lived by his word. And again, he had uncompromisingly insisted on forgiveness. And friends, it was one thing to preach this to his hearers, but it was quite another to hang there, nailed by his hands and his feet to the cross, and then say, "Father, forgive them." Again, it was one thing to teach his disciples that they must be humble and become the least and be of service to humanity. And then he actually died in utter humility in an act of supreme service to the human race. And again, he told them that he loved them to the end. And he did. He loved them till his very last breath, till his very last drop of blood. He loved freely. He welcomed those everyone rejected. He sat at table with sinners. To the poor he brought good news, and the oppressed he set free. He was God, but as man he lived the human life genuinely and made his humanity the light of the human race. So the power of the story of Jesus is the absolute credibility of the man. The power of his story is my faith conviction. It's not theology. The power of this man's story is my faith conviction. So here then is my argument about the resurrection. It's not a theological argument. I believe in the resurrection because I believe in the man. I believe in the resurrection because everything he said and he taught, he proved it in his life. I believe his claim to be the Son of God because everything else he claimed came true. When he said he would die, he died even though it was a brutal death. So when he said that he would rise, I believe because what he said in his life was true. Folks, I don't believe in the resurrection because I believe in the resurrection. And don't be scandalized a priest is saying this to you. I do not believe in the resurrection because I believe in the resurrection. I believe in the resurrection because I believe him. If his life was not what it was, and if his death was not how he was, then I could not reach a faith conviction. But because his life was what it was, because his death was how it was, so no one has to prove to me the resurrection. I believe in the resurrection because I believe him. Do you believe in the resurrection? Is it a faith conviction. It's 2,000 years since the resurrection. And you and I have come to church today to celebrate the resurrection of the man who loved us beyond death. But the entire world is not convinced yet. Even our children have doubts. Some of our own don't believe. They have questions. When it comes to the resurrection, when it comes to Jesus, when it comes to the new life, folks, the world will not believe because we have the best army in the world, or because we have won the toughest wars in the world, or because we have the power to turn the world on its head. They will not believe because of that. They will not believe because of the grandeur of our architecture or the wealth of our institutions. They will not believe because the numbers of the members or the influence of our name. They will not believe because of our ornate vestments or our intricate rituals and rubrics. Rather, the world will only believe in the resurrection if the story of the church is the story of Jesus. Lived credibly, genuinely, and truthfully. They will only believe in the story of those who call themselves Christians if their story is the story of Jesus. We cannot call ourselves Christians and forget to love like he did. We cannot call ourselves Christians and forget to show mercy and compassion like he did. We cannot call ourselves Christians and neglect to only do good like he did. We cannot oppress. We cannot create disharmony. We cannot resort to violence, speak lies, villainize the poor, judge and condemn others, and expect the world to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. We cannot befriend evil, neglect to love God, fail to love our neighbor, not forgive our enemies, not pray for those who persecute us, and expect our children to believe in the resurrection. They will only believe in the resurrection because they see the story of Jesus lived out authentically, genuinely, and truly in us, those who call ourselves Christians. Listen, folks, I don't know if we will play video games in heaven, or have rich, juicy food or choice wines in heaven all day. Honestly, I don't know that. But we have a glimpse of whatever we will be in the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. That we know. So meanwhile, we celebrate the Eucharist. We celebrate this Eucharist. We celebrate this Eucharist to tell the world that Jesus is risen from the dead. But it does not depend just on this Mass. After we have celebrated this Mass, we go out, and the world will either see or not see the power of the story of Jesus lived out in us. And to the extent that we bear witness to the one who has risen from the dead, they will not believe. But if our story is the story of this man, then doubts will disappear and people will come to know that Jesus is indeed risen from the dead. Happy Easter to you.